Hi everyone, welcome again. So this is the next session in the Azure Bicep training series. And today we are going to talk about the Azure Bicep file structure. Before we continue this session, let's go ahead and have a recap on the previous session so far. So the course outline that you see here, the first session that we had was about the infrastructure as code practices. So we discussed about what exactly the infrastructure as code principle says, and what exactly you need to ensure, and what are the different things you will get benefited with when you are following infrastructure as code, and what are the various aspect, especially when you're talking about cloud infrastructure management, that can be kind of can be done in a much better way if you are doing this with this principle, that is infrastructure as code. The next session we had is on Azure Bicep. So what exactly the Azure Bicep is, so from where it is coming and how exactly it helps you to kind of fix your problem, or maybe where exactly it fits into the ecosystem of the tools that are popular in this industry. So for example, how does it compare with the Terraform, and when should you pick either of them, or should you use both of them, or what exactly the strategy should be when you are using one of the tool. The next session we had is on the tools and setup. So this one was about what are the different tools that you need to have if you're starting your journey in Azure Bicep. So from here we started looking into the Azure Bicep specific things. So we had a look on the tools such as Visual Studio Code, the useful extensions that you need to have, and some of the basic commands from AGCLI that can help you to do the basic stuff that you need to do when you are doing Azure Bicep on day-to-day basis. So we just had a quick start there, and then from there we are going to discuss about Azure Bicep file structure today, and then in subsequent section we will be covering different aspect of Azure Bicep file. Now, if you look at a Azure Bicep file, it looks like something like that. So instead of that, let me open a Bicep file here, and so that you can have a look on the Bicep file, or maybe a little bit more complex one, possibly, to explain you various things which are more more common when you are dealing with Azure Bicep. And today we are going to discuss more on a very high level. The objective of this session would be to kind of understand the high level aspect of these various things that we see. Let me open this main.bicep file, and we will be going through the basics here, and then in subsequent sessions we will be looking into the the specific things in more details, how to use them, what are the various things you need to make sure when you are using these different component. Now before, let's go ahead and kind of explore this file and try to understand what exactly these different component which you would see in more in any Bicep file if you are working with the scalable infrastructure. So if you look at my screen here, and if you look at here, then the first thing that you see is the couple of things with the param keyword. This param keyword is nothing but and one more thing just here, that if you are using Visual Studio Code for the first time, then you can see that the keywords have a different kind of color scheme, and this is one of the color scheme that I'm using on Visual Studio Code. Now this color scheme can be changed based on your choice or your preferences from here. If you go here in preference, and if you go to the color theme, then you can see that right now I have this Visual Studio 2019 Lite, but if you change these different other color schemes, then those keywords that you see may change the way they look for you. So if you see them differently on your Visual Studio Code screen, then it may be possible that you are using a different color scheme. It does not really matter. It's just a kind of a how look and feel, and how do you see, and what exactly your preferences are. I just thought of having a note there. So yeah, I mean, the first thing you see is the keyword, that is param. So param is like parameter. So if you are already doing any kind of scripting or automation, then you might already know that when you are writing a script or when you're writing a program, then possibly it will be a requirement where you need to modularize that particular script in a way that certain information you need to pass on when the script is running. So for example, if you are writing a script to deploy a storage account, then possibly you may have to write the script so that on each run you may want to provide different values for certain properties of that storage account. For example, storage account name, storage account SKU, and so forth. So in the similar way, this script is doing something, and it's essentially creates a Kubernetes cluster, a Azure Kubernetes cluster in the Azure, and here we are saying that each time it go ahead and create that, we are providing a cluster name over here, and cluster location, and the cluster admin group ID. So no need to get into the details of each or understand meaning of each of these parameter as of now. Our objective here is that if you see a param, then at least you should know that param means something that can be provided on the run. So if you are writing a script and if you think that certain properties has to be flexible enough where users supposed to give that their input, and you want to use that input into your further script, you can use the param keyword to declare those values. And how do you declare that? We will soon see those things in a bit, but this is one of the keyword, or one of the component that you see in a bicep file. Now there are different things that you can do with param keyword. There are different kind of decorations that you can do. There are different kind of ways you can use a param keyword to customize the way you want to have this parameter, and those things we will be covering when we will be covering the parameter session. So we will have a dedicated session for parameter, we will have a dedicated session for resource, we will have a dedicated session for module. So all these things will have a dedicated lesson most probably, or either some of them will be combined together if it makes sense. But yes, we will be having a detailed session on this particular part. Right now, the clear objective here is that what exactly this means. This means there is something that will be provided on the run, and this script expect the Azure Bicep file expect that when you are running this Bicep file using CLI or PowerShell or whatever the way you are going to deploy, you need to provide those values on the run using either parameter file or using the command line interface, and we will look into those things as well. Now the next part here is the var. So var is like variable. It is very much similar to parameter, but it differs in a way that you can use. So parameter is something that you declare, and a user who is running the script is supposed to provide those values. But in case of variable, this is not true. So in case of variable, you define it globally, but this will not be asked by user. So it has to have the value when you are defining it. So the primary difference between variable and parameter, if you look at the conceptual point of view, that parameter something that has to have value by the user. So you can't define the value within your script. You can have a default value, and we will see that how do you define that. But you know the overall understanding or the overall idea of having parameter is that something that should be provided by user. In case of variable, wherever you declare the variable, you actually provide the value of the variable as well, so that you can use in your further script. So it's again a global value, something that you can use in entire script similar to parameter, but it will not be defined. The value will not be provided by user. The value should be provided by you, the way I am defining it here. So here I am using a value coming from the parameter, and then I'm adding certain things over here, and we will see how those things can be done. This is called string interpolation, and we'll see that how do you do that. But for the right now, the overall objective is to understand what exactly this keyword is. The next thing that you see here is the target scope. So when you deploy Azure Bicep file in Azure, you can deploy it on different levels or different scope. So you can deploy certain things on a tenant level, you can deploy certain resources on management group level, you can deploy resources on a subscription level, or you can deploy resources on a resource group level. So these are the different levels where you can deploy, and of course the type of things that you deploy can also have a limitation, and we will see that. We will have again a dedicated session for target scope as well. So there we will see how do you exactly use different kind of scope to define or deploy different kind of resources, and when exactly you use a particular type of target scope. Here, as you can see, we are deploying things on a subscription level. So we are, this Bicep file will look at a subscription and provide that value, and then going further, these all things will be created, and we'll see that what are the things it is creating. So the first thing that it is creating is a resource group. So if you can see, and it is very easy to guess over here, that if you see this particular section, which is nothing but a resource provider. So in Azure, whenever you interact using Azure Resource Manager model, you actually interact with one of the resource provider in Azure, and they are like typically endpoint, which are responsible for a set of things that they can do. So here we are talking to resource provider, for resource group, and then we are telling that these are the properties that I want to set. So for example, I want to create a resource group with this name, and this name is getting defined with this variable and in this location, which is coming from this particular parameter. Similarly, next thing I'm doing is I'm using a module. So resource is something that you actually do, deploy in Azure, I would say. Modules are something. So suppose you have set of things that you want to do, set of resources that you want to create. Then instead of and then in a standard way, so instead of doing that resource again and again, you create a module for it, and then you can actually just call that module, provide some variables over there, and then it will take care. And now if you look at this modules, you'll see that it is nothing but a file within my file system. And if I go to this particular file system, or maybe this one, so if I go to this particular file system over here, then you can see that this is nothing but another Bicep file. And if you have a close look here on this particular Bicep file, you will see that it is nothing but having a resource here and with some kind of customization. So it's kind of 62 long line, yeah, but I'm calling this line within this particular number of lines, so less than 10 or 11 lines here. So if I would have created the things that I'm defining here, then probably I would have written this 62 lines over here. So what it is doing for me is that I'm just writing this 62 line here in a very standard way. So it is, all the standard stuff like what SKU I normally deploy for AKS cluster, what are the different configuration that I deploy, and then I have customized it. And then when I am about to deploy a AKS cluster, I'm just calling that module over here, and then I'm just saying that, I need these parameters. I am providing SSH key over here, and then you need to deploy that with that particular customized way. And this is exactly the module is. So module is, as you can think of, module is a standard way of standardizing your resources, one or more than one resources. So you can, right now we are looking at modules which are essentially deploying one resource only. So for example, here I'm deploying log analytics, and if I go to this module here, it just, you can see this is just a simple log analytics workspace that I'm deploying. But you can have a situation where you can have module to deploy a set of things in a customized way, and then you call it a standard module like 3-tier app or SQL web app or something like that, and there you do all the things related to these different kind of infrastructures. So for example, you can have a SQL server, you can have a web app, you can have a virtual machine, you can have a load balancer or traffic manager as you require, and then you call this particular entire infrastructure architecture stack as a module, and then you call that module as and when you need that entire thing in your main file, and then you can have it spend. So that way what will happen is that code reusability. So anyone who want to deploy AKS cluster in a standard way in your organization, they just have to call this AKS module this way, and then everything will be coming from here, and there is a standard central team who is managing this AKS cluster, who will keep updating things here, and that should be applied to all the underlying or all the calling main files, maybe in dev environment or maybe in QA or maybe staging and so on and so forth. Or you can also publish this module in a registry, similar to any other modular kind of infrastructure. If you think of a container image, or if you can think of a npm package, you can publish them in a shared registry, and someone who wants to deploy that set of infrastructure, they can call that from there. So it's not that just on the file system, but you can also publish it on a central registry system or somewhere, and then you can you can use it. But yeah, I mean, right now we are not going deep down into the module. How do you create them? How do you use them? How do you consume them? But essentially, if you have a look on this, you should be at least familiar what exactly this one is and how is it working. Again, like I said, all these different sections we will be having separate session to in subsequent chapters, and we will be going deep down in each of these keywords or segments or part of the bicep file, and try to cover all the major, or I would say most of the useful things related to them, so that when you use these things in your bicep file, what are the different ways you can use them, and what are the different possibilities that you have in order to kind of do the best practices around infrastructure as code, especially in Azure Bicep. Now, once we have this on Azure Bicep, and essentially we are not going to kind of deploy this, but what we are going to do next is we are going to create a module, not module, but a Bicep file using some of these basic component here. So if I go to this Bicep folder, let me just open this again. So yeah, this is the training. And we already had created a storage.bicep, which was kind of, you can see there are certain things here, but what I will do, I will create a file here again, storage1.bicep. So as soon as I do this .bicep, it will detect that this is a bicep file. And if I do here, and like I said, I will do the similar kind of deployment, but this time I'll be using some of the component or some of the things that we have discussed so far. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy a resource, and I will call this my storage, yeah, that's it. And then if I select the storage account provider, yeah, and then I will select the API version, and then I will just, so as you can see, the Visual Studio Code extension is is helping me a lot in doing things on my own. And of course, if at all I want to understand all these different component, I can anytime go to the API documentation for this provider and can see what are the different options we have. Now here we will not go into that, but essentially what I will do is, so last time when we discussed, we kind of hard coded these name value. Now this time what we will do is we will create a parameter here, and as you can see, it's again giving me the kind of a help here, and param, identifier. So identifier is like, a symbolic name, you can say, or variable name or parameter name, and then what type of this parameter it is. So here I will say my storage, or I will say this my storage name, and type is, if I do this, then it will again give me what are the different types available. Of course, we will go through all these types. For the time being, we know that it will be a string. So storage account name is a string value, and that's why we are putting this as a string. So the moment we will define this, now if I type here and if I say my storage name, it will be available here, and I can set the value. Similarly, for location, I can either ask the location from user, similar way, and I can say that also string, and then I can provide that location value over here. So this way it will ask user to provide the location, and then I can kind of provide that value over here. Similarly, I can either use a SKU which is available, or I can hard code this value, or I can even ask this value as a parameter here. Or what I can do is I can even define it as a variable, so that whenever I'm using this particular maybe as a I will say storage SKU, and I will define it as a hard code value like this. So it's very similar to parameter, but the way you define it or the usability thing is a bit different. Now when I define it here, it's of course not a very practical example over here, because we are just deploying a storage account, a simple storage account, and practically in production you might not deploy just a storage account, you might deploy certain other things, and of course not a storage account, such a simple storage account. But as we will move forward in this training, we will start using different components such as module, targetScope and other things, and then this will start becoming interesting, and then you will see how you can start from a very simple thing and then you get a very real-time production ready infrastructure as code using Azure Bicep. So this is the objective here. So if this looks very simple to you, that's fine, that was the objective. But if the main objective here is that if the too much complexity is there, and if it doesn't make sense to you, the previous example that we saw when we were explaining different component, then this is the way forward from scratch. Now before we move forward, let's go ahead and define the kind. So here I'll again pick a very simple thing here, storage v2. Again, I can have a variable or I can have a parameter to ask this thing. We will have, as I said again, we will have a detailed discussion on parameter, because this is one of the very useful thing where you can actually define many rules. How do you want your users to provide those values? So as you can see, storage v2 is a kind of not a very user-friendly information, or user-friendly user might not enter the way it's supposed to accept the value. So storage, they may enter a storage or a storage v or a storage v 3.4 or something like that. So how do we help user to provide the values in a more useful way, in a better way? Those things we will be discussing in parameter, and there are many other things as well. Now so this is, we have kind of created a very simple thing, storage account, and most of the things apart from some of the complex stuff like modules, we have not used here. targetScope, this, as you can see, we will see that we are just deploying it by default on a resource group level, but in coming sessions we will start adding those complex things like modules and then target scope, and we will explain when do you need them, how do you use them, and how exactly they fit into these complex infrastructure. Now the other thing, a very simple thing, is output. So it is similar to parameter or variable you can think of, but instead of coming for the this value you don't define, you actually get output from this file, and then you can use it either for printing the information on the screen, or you may use it for further processing in the next module, or maybe in the next bicep file call. I mean, it entirely depends upon how do you want to use it. For example, if I okay, we will have this we will have a look on this particular part in a bit. So for the time being, let me just quickly define it. Storage, yeah, storage account, or maybe my storage account, and then I will say string. Again, here also you can define different types, so I will go for a string. And then here what I'm going to do is this will come from my, so I messed up with the naming convention. Let's use this same naming convention. So my storage dot, so when you create a storage account, you get these different properties. So I can output any of these property as a kind of a output, and then I can use it for anything. Like, so for example, I'm using creation time, so and then possibly I want to output this, or may want to use it for logging purpose or whatever. I mean, it's just a kind of a, right now the overall objective is to understand what exactly this means, and of course we will look at the practical expectation or the practical implementation of all these different things as and when we will start adding up things in these basic bicep files. So right now we have a very simple bicep file which is using a parameter, which is using a variable, which is using a resource, and then which is using a output output value. Now to deploy this, all we have to do is we have to do the AZ login, or let me do this. So I will do this. Actually, I'll create a resource group. So I'm creating Azure AZ group create name bicep demo 01 in East US. And for that, let me quickly open this portal so that we can see we don't have a resource group like that. I'm opening it. So we have this opened here, and we'll quickly go to the resource group section here so that we can see we don't have anything related to bicep here, just in case during dry run if I have left something. No, so it's nothing there. So all I have to do is I'm going to create a AZ group create name bicep demo 01. So I'm just going to create this. This will go ahead and create this particular resource group in my Azure subscription, and as and when it will be ready, it's coming out here. And then if I go here in the resource group, and if I refresh here, it takes big time, so UI sometime is slow here. And if I, okay, still not loading. Yeah, it's here. And if I go here, we don't have anything over here. Yeah, so it's again we will do the similar kind of stuff, but this time you will see a little bit of difference. That okay, so the thing is storage, yeah, folder name is day 4 actually, but yeah, anyway, no problem. Or maybe let me do this, because when I put it in the recording, and then some people will, so I'm going to create a folder here, day 4, and let me move this storage to day 4. Yeah, and yeah, so storage 1 is there, and there is, because there is no other storage, so it makes sense to rename this again, and I will rename it, yeah, storage only, so no need to have one because it's in a different folder anyway. Okay, so we have the resource group, we have the bicep file, and I'm going to deploy this bicep file, and all I need to change is that D4. So what I'm doing is, and this is doing what if. Yeah, so what if is another useful command to test the bicep file. We will have a dedicated session, so let me just go ahead and run this. So all it does is it goes to the resource manager, try to see what exactly will happen if I run this particular bicep file, and will give me the idea that what will happen if I go ahead and deploy this. Now if you see this, if I want to deploy this, I will have to provide these value, my storage name. As you can see, it's a parameter here, so I have to provide it. So earlier it was hard coded, so now I'm going to provide this. So I will use a adp demo day 4 SA account, just to make sure that it is long enough and unique enough. Day 4 SA account. Yep. Now you can see it's also asking location, so I'll give the location same as what we have in resource group. Usually this is the best practice, but of course you can have a different one as well. This is one of the Azure region, so I'm going to provide this, and then it is going to check what will happen if we deploy this. So if we have some syntax error, or something is wrong with this particular bicep file, it will either fail here itself, or it will give me the 99% of the time, if what if is working, then possibly your deployment will also work. And as you can see, it's it's going into the deployment, and it's trying to go ahead and create this in the, so I have selected a different resource group actually during the command, so I will have to change that. As you can see, during dry run I was testing it, so let me rename it. So it is bicep demo 01, so let me do this. Bicep demo 01, that was the resource group name, right? So let me just go ahead, bicep demo 01. Yeah, so now this will again do the same thing. It will again ask me what will happen. Let this run. So as you can see, last time, because this particular resource group already have some component, so it was showing me that now it is showing you that it is going to create a storage account, and it is plus, and I mean, this is all it is going to do, nothing else. So let me go ahead and give a storage account name. So again, I'll provide the same name, adp demo 04 storage account. Oops. adp demo 04 storage account, and then again location, so East US, and then it is trying to again try to deploy this resource, this bicep file resources in that resource group, bicep demo 01. So earlier I was trying to deploy it in a different, one of the test resource group that I have. Now it will try to, so it is not deploying yet, it is just use of what if. So what if tells you what will happen. It is, if you have used Terraform, then Terraform also have something called plan, which will give you what will happen if you deploy this particular Terraform file. Similar to that, Azure has came up with this particular command. Now this is still not deployed, it is just telling me that this is what will happen if you run this command. And if I go ahead and check my bicep resource group, then I'll see that there is nothing, because it has not deployed. It is just checking if you deploy this on this resource group, this is what will happen, and it will give you the properties and all, typical properties. And because this storage account is a very simple one, not many properties that I am defining, so all it will come with the default thing for rest of the other things. So let me go ahead and deploy this now. So if I go ahead and do this, so AG deployment group create, and then if I do this again, it will ask me the name of the storage account, because that's the parameter that I have not defined. Now, is this the only way you can provide the parameter? No. So this is one of the basic way. If you have done scripting with any other any other tool, the shell or PowerShell, this is one of the basic way everywhere else. But Azure Bicep also accept parameter from a file, from a JSON file as well, and that we are going to discuss in upcoming sessions. Okay, so first let me go ahead and provide this adp demo 04 storage account, and I will say East US, and then it will, now this time I'm because I have created it, so it will go ahead and deploy this on the Azure. So let's wait for this to finish, and then we'll see that how this works. In the meanwhile, if I go to the portal and if I refresh it, so if you see that it is showing me there is a deployment happening, and still kind of deploying because still not succeeded. So you can see the progress on the portal as well, how it's going. And if you go there, then it will see, as you can see, it has already reported it has deployed and what are the things it has done. So you can look at it and you can browse that storage account, but we will go from here. And if I go to this bicep, this resource group, then you see that the storage account has been created. And if I go to the Visual Studio, then you see that we have this kind of return, where it is telling me what has kind of been created. There is a resource group that I have created, and there is an output that was defined as a part of the output. It is telling me it is a string, and the string has this value, which is the creation time. And again, I can use this value as I may want, and in upcoming sessions we'll be looking into this particular part as well in one of the dedicated session. What are the different ways you can use output file in your modularized code. So this is it from a bicep file structure point of view. What are the basic component in a bicep file, how do you navigate through them, and what are the basic understanding, so that when you open a bicep file from this session onward, you should be having a fair idea what component does what. How do you use them? This is again a topic to come, and if it is still not very clear, then that's okay, because we have not even discussed about it, how exactly you can use those things, and how exactly you can kind of make use of this different aspect of parameter or variables or resources or modules and other things that are always available in some of the complex infrastructure that you create using bicep file. With that, this is it from my side for today. We will discuss further in next session the various other things about Azure Bicep. We will start having a look on different aspect in dedicated sessions. For example, we'll have a dedicated session for parameter, where we will see what are the different ways you can use a parameter, what is the easiest way to have a complex kind of parameter, where you have not just one thing, you can have a kind of a structured object kind of parameter, and how do you use it, when do you need it exactly, and how do you kind of consume those type of parameters. Similarly, we will get into these different things in other files as well. With that, thank you so much for watching this session. We will meet again in the next video in the Azure Bicep. Hope you are enjoying this training. Please share your feedback in the comment section, or join our Telegram group and post your questions or feedback over there as well. Thank you. Have a good